Good morning. Hemshech Ayin Beis, volume 3. We're on page 1324. Aleph Shin Chav Daled. Discussing the deeper understanding of the second form of sweetening, what we call transforming Gvura. Gvura refers to all forms of concealment, darkness, severities, judgments. And this time, it's not through engaging and battle, like the battle between the divine soul or the animal soul, or battling your challenges, but it's introducing a higher power that stands above it all and in a sense just zaps out and transforms any of the negatives, like he'd explained on page 1322 and 1323. Now, so simply in psychological terms, you can say that there are two ways to engage when you're dealing with any type of setback or challenge, or let's call it psychological fear or insecurity. One is you engage with it, which means you try to figure out what's the problem. You discuss it, you review it, and you try to find methods to override the negative attitude. Let's say a person just feeling down, they're depressed. I'm just using a complete psychological application here. So there are ways. Try to introduce something positive in your life. Look at the good things that are going on. And if you bring enough sweet water, meaning enough beautiful things, it can override and outnumber the negative. You know, like you see sometimes a person is down, then you bring them to a simcha, to a celebration, or they focus on something positive, and the positive outnumbers or outweighs the negative. So you've not transformed it, but you've overridden it. In a way, you've distracted yourself to the point that you can even persuade that voice within you to also go along because it's good for you. So even though, let's say, a person is not in the mood to go to a party or to a wedding or to a celebration or to a Yom Tov, to a holiday, but you know, it comes to a point where you say, no, it's good for me to do that. Very basic. The second approach is completely different. You get exposed to something that's so powerful and awesome, it just blows you away. So you don't even have time. So everything about you just gets changed. It's like going to, like he said, you know, he talked about Matan Torah or the Beis Hamikdash, or going and seeing your Rebbe, or some other awesome experience that is so overpowering that it just transforms everything about you. And that's due to a higher alien, as he calls it, a higher force. So you're not engaging and you're not involving and so on. And this is true in everything, whether it's parents and children. Sometimes your children you have to listen to them and try to figure out how to make things better. Sometimes you just have to expose them to something so powerful and good that just elevates the whole situation. Now, is that complete transformation from within? He said clearly it's coming from an outside force. It's coming from a much higher force. It's even coming more from chesed than it is from the gvura. But because it's so powerful, it just transforms. So in the language of Kabbalah, that's the Shema. The Shema that's rooted in the Metzach. So it has an atzmizdik power to refine things. That's why the Shema has the power of birur. It's mevar, the Shem bat. In the language of Chassidus, it's like the divine is refining the mundane, or the divine soul is refining the animal soul. And the way it's done in the higher level, the second level, not the first. The first, the focus is more on the ban, engaging, battle, and it's not just an automatic zapping, so to speak. Even though there's some engagement, but it's not in the full engagement. Here, we're talking about something that is coming from a higher place. That's why he says, that's like the Matan Torah experience. That's the Shema. And that's why he says it's Tzaddikim, because we're talking about a high level of exposure here. So even though all of us can have a taste of it and experience of it, but it's Tzaddikim that do it in the fullest sense of the word. Tzaddikim in their Avodah, that's what their job is, to bring the Shema Begili. to bring this atzmizdika power, which in general is concealed. Like you see it on the forehead, you see a glow, but you can't say that you see it in a fully revealed, integrated way. So he says, but that's the role of tzaddikim. That, like he says here, the word bitl of Mah, which on its own is concealed, and that's why there are the different stages and levels. Because if it was revealed, like he said, it was revealed and entered every one of the Nevrayim, they would not be able to be themselves. They would all become batel. But it's the tzaddikim that are mamshel this through their avodah. Because in ishtalshlus, like he says, it comes in a concealed way, and they reveal it through their service and their work. Now, in the future, this will be fully revealed. That's why it says, Lo yikonafed merecha, that your master, your teacher will no longer be concealed by any garment, and you'll see him in full glory without garments. But how is it possible that we can do that today? Today, there has to be some form of levush, like he said. How could it be today? So he said, today you don't have the complete revelation where the Yesh is completely the Ayin. It's the Ayin manifesting in the Yesh. That's what he says. In other words, the physicality of existence remains, but you're introducing the Gili of the Shem Ma. And he gave the example for the Man. On one hand, the Man is a physical entity, but it's a mysterious entity. It's definitely manifesting higher stages, higher divine revelation, as opposed to bread of the earth, the bread of heaven, like we learned in detail here, that he cited from the Maimorim back in volume 2. The words he used is that but it comes in a form of Yesh. In other words, it is still manifesting in something that exists. La'asad love, clearly, it'll all become one, and we won't even feel that there's a Yesh. The Yesh will be there, but it won't be in any way that has substance that we can identify. Today, we still have existence as it is, but in it is shining this higher power. And the Man is one example for it. That's why it's called Man lo yod mahu, the level of Gimel Rishenis of Atik lo yod v'lo yisyada. That's why the Man did not have any waste, and it was not measurable. On the other hand, it came in a form of a physical food, Sir Michael Gashmi, and they ground it and they cooked it, so it had the features of physical food. At the same time, he says that's the Ayin Eliki that comes in the form of a Yesh, and it's literally like the Ayin. In other words, the divine nature of it is as powerful as the divine itself, the divine Ayin, but it is somewhat manifesting in the Yesh. That's how he explains how we can have that today. Now, what does that mean on our terms? That no matter what, even in this higher level, where you bring a higher Gili, can also affect us in a very direct way, and that's where the Hamtakas HaGvuras happens. The sweetening of the Gvura, or like he calls here the Yesh, that the Yesh is being elevated, but it's not being completely eliminated. That's why we can have it today, even though the Asad Lave, it'll be on a different level altogether. Which essentially means the Asad Lave, the whole world would be so refined that the Ayin could shine, and it doesn't even need the Keli, or what he calls the forehead and the face. Now that needs to be discussed. What does that mean exactly? Does it mean the world will not cease to exist? We know that. But the Gili will be far more without any levushim. So I'll leave that for later because we're not really up to that point yet. But in contrast, today you have so there's still a garment, but the garment is fully permeated with the ayin of the Oyer Eliki. He's going to give more examples. Remember the end of last chapter, he spoke about the way tzaddikim eat a meal, Shabbos and so on are also examples of this. Like I've explained, weekdays, it's more like lechem min haaretz. It's we're working hard, we make a living, we eat meals, and we try to elevate and refine those meals. Shabbos, the very meal itself, is a mitzvah. That means that the Yesh has become an ayin, basically. The Yesh of the same meal, the food that you're eating, has become a mitzvah of Hashem. When you eat in the weekdays, there's no mitzvah. The mitzvah is to use the food for L'Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven. But the food itself, the meal is not a mitzvah. It's rishus. So that is also going to be an example. So when we sanctify our lives, like he said, Matan Torah gave us the power to transform the physical into the spiritual, basically to spiritualize the material world, that is somewhat bringing the ayin or the shem ma into ban, the level that we're discussing now. But it's coming from the top down, not from the bottom up, as we're learning here. So that's where we're up to, the parentheses. It's around 2/3 of the way down the page, 1324. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody wants, but he's not finished the topic, so there'll be more that may clarify some of these points as well. But if somebody has something that's jumping out at you, I'm happy to address it. Okay. So now the parentheses that begins on the line, ubashlu, duchum bashlu esei. So the line begins esei, at the end of the line, umakol mokim. He's going to qualify now and say, which means that the ruchnis is shining within the gashmis, and it's like equal to the ruchnis, but it's still the yesh. It's not purely the ayin. It's the ayin as it manifests in the yesh. In other words, think of it this way. If a tzaddik in heaven, the neshama has no body, so there is pure ayin. It's the neshama. It's pure spirituality. It's purely ethereal. That same tzaddik comes down on earth, and the soul is inside his body. His body has been refined because he's a tzaddik. So he's the point that he's transformed and everything we talked about, the tzaddik gomer, but it's still in a body. You can't say he's a pure neshama. It's not pure ayin. It's ayin within the yesh, but the yesh has been elevated to that level. And then there's, of course, a higher state that will be l'osulov. As I said, I'll discuss that a little later. So now he's going to say, Makol Mokim, even though the man is that way, that the man is on one hand, it's a physical food, but it's completely manifests ma, which is ma, lo yodu ma, the level of atik, that doesn't have anything it doesn't have waste. It's like he said before, that it's a physical thing, but from a higher place, like literally like something of ruchnius came down into gashmius. As much as the man, and which is an example here for the yesh that has the ayin shining through it, it's still not the way it is, literally in its root above. This was a long discussion in volume 2. That's why the man did not come down on Shabbos, because if it was exactly that way, why didn't it come on Shabbos? It was produced in Shabbos in heaven. But why doesn't it come down? Because it has to have the weekdays for it to manifest in some form of garment. So it says like this. Well, before I go read on, let me just explain. So he explained earlier that on one hand, man and Shabbos are like the same level, and the man is produced on Shabbos, but it didn't fall down on earth. There was no Shabbos, there was no man. That's why on Friday they got two measures. That's why we take Lech and Mishnah, the two chalas, to represent one for Friday, one for Shabbos. Because Shabbos, they were not supposed to pick, there was no, man did not come down. Now, why not, if it's that level? Because the way it's in its purest place, it's in a state of aliyah, it's in a state of being completely consumed by and elevating into the highest levels of ayin. It's on Sunday morning where the man comes down and manifests in a garment called the man. So you see from this, and that's the reason, because like he just said, the way it is b'shar shelamayla is completely spiritual. And that's why it doesn't come down into a physical manifestation. The only thing is that we have a example of it in the third meal of Shabbos. That's what he explained. So he said like this. It's only in a form of aliyah, not yurida, because the 3 meals of Shabbos represent the 3 times it says achluhu in the pasuk about man, which is where we learn the 3 meals. So the 3rd time it says lo yachlu. That's why in Chabad they don't wash for the 3rd meal, like he explained in volume 2. Because it's a reminder of the state of man that is not fully manifest in the physical sense. So the first 2 meals you wash for, but the 3rd meal represents the man in its purest form. And what is the purest form? In a state of aliyah, the solution, the Shabbos, like he explained there, is the aliyah all the way to Atik. The first meal is the meal of Maila Shabbato. There he explained it's the first aliyah of Shabbos, but it's still coming down and relating to the physical world. After 6 days of work comes Friday night. The second meal, he said, was the Suda of Zah. The first meal is Malchus, Zah, and he explained that is now elevating, but it still connects to existence. And the third is a completely higher spiritual state. So that's the connection to the man. That connects it most to the man, as he explained there at length. And there, and he's being brief here. I'll explain, but he says, "V'hari zeh kamoi pnimius abashu pnimius atik." So we know there's an expression in Zohar. It's brought quite a few times in Ayin Beis, that the pnimius of Chachma is the level of pnimius atik. He brought it here earlier as well, I believe, where he spoke about pnimius Chachma, when he said, just last page, where was it? 2 pages back. Yeah, right here. When he said Atzmi is Chachma, I don't think he wrote Pnimius Chachma. 1 second. Okay, so anyway, there's the expression Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik, which means the Pnimius of Chachma is connected to Pnimius Atik. So earlier we learned, so what's the difference then between Atik and Chachma? So the obvious answer is because in Pnimius Atik itself is pure Atik. It doesn't have any manifestation connected to anything that we could hold on to. That's what he says now. So Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik, Pnimius Atik Mamish. At the end of the day, you can't say it's Pnimius Atik Mamish, because then why do you call it Abba, Chachma? It's just saying that Chachma has the capacity through its bittul. And by the way, Chachma is Ma, Koyach Ma. So it's like the man that's manifesting Atik within it. But then there's Atik as it is in its pure form, where it's not even manifesting in any consciousness. Remember, Chachma at the end, even Pnimius Chachma is a form of conscious. Atik is super conscious. So therefore, we have now, there's 2 levels. There's the Ayin as its pure Ayin. There's the Ayin as it manifests in Yesh. And that's the difference. So even though he said, is B'shava Kamoya Ayin Mamish, but it's not literally as the Ayin is on its own. And it makes sense. Because as I said before with the Tzaddikim, even when a Tzaddik comes down below, even if it's a Tzaddik, his avodah of Avaviyir, the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 37 in Tanya, is never going to be the same way it is without a body. Because a body at the end of the day does limit something. Even by a tzaddik who completely transforms everything, and there's nothing negative, but the pure spiritual firepower is always going to be higher in a place where there's no physical body. So here he's talking about something so we have both levels here. The ayin on its own and the ayin as it manifests in the yesh. B'zeu ha'hefer, she says. And this is the difference, it's all in the parentheses. Bein hamshachas tzaddikim achshav, bein the difference between what the tzaddikim transmit today, meaning before la'asid loveh, ubein la'asid shiur k'meishu b'shar shemamish. And how it'll be in the future, when then it's going to be literally like it's in its source. So that's the big difference that he's saying here. Remember, he pointed out before that la'asid loveh, no problem. Nira, he said in the parentheses, that it'll be in a way there'll be no garment at all. But today, how is that possible? He asked. He said, because today it does come in some form of a keli, some form of a garment. The refinement will be so complete that it'll be seamless. The oir and keli will be completely seamless. So there'll be a keli, but the keli will not sense itself in any way. Whereas today, there is an identity, like the man, there's a physical food, but its personality is completely spiritual. That's essentially what he's saying here. So that's the difference. The Primus Abba, Primus Atik was mentioned a while back, even in volume 3. I'll look for it and I'll point out where it is. I was just looking for something that he referred to earlier, and for some reason, he said Primus Chochma, there's not the Shvira. I remember he said a language. He said Atzmis, I think, Chochma, and then Primus Chochma. For some reason, I can't find it now. Not sure why. Well, for sure it was on this page. I'm looking on page 1321, where he brings Primus Chochma there when he talks about the Eitz HaChaim, tree of life. Just give me another moment. Something is bugging me. Something is ringing a bell, and I'm trying to think it's relevant here. That's why I'm. Okay, I don't find what I'm looking for. We'll find it. Okay, any questions? Let's stop here if anybody wants to ask anything. No?
I do. And on a practical note, when we talk about the third meal on Shabbos, it's our custom to eat very little. I mean, could it be just like a glass of water or something like that? I mean, and then mystically, we're going to get the effect with that keli, that minimal keli, or and just as a practical note, what to do on Saturday afternoon.
Well, but it says in Hayom Yom, it says to eat fruits, cake. We just don't wash for the meal. It represents like la'osed love when there'll be loy achila v'loy shtia. It says elam haba will not have eating and drinking. So it's not completely no eating and drinking. It's a taste of just to make a type of recognition, a zecher, to have some taste of something that's higher than a full meal. That's essentially what it comes down to, that there's 3 stages, the 3 meals, and the third meal is the closest to the state, what he's describing here. The fact that the man did not come down on Shabbos.
No, I totally realize it, but I just want to know how far can you agree that, like a piece of lettuce or just a glass of seltzer or something.
Ayin Beis, you're not going to find an answer. That you have to look and say from Minhagim.
No, I'm asking.
It says to eat mine peiros with mezenos, fruit and cake. That's what it says explicitly. You could eat whatever. You could eat potato chips if you want. Carb free.
Not exactly closely. But
Okay, so don't need to, fine. My point is, basically the only thing we know is not washing for a full meal.
Okay, I think they just gave an example, but I think you can.
Where's there an example? The Ayin Beis
right.
didn't give any example.
No, I wasn't asking Ayin Beis. I was asking Rabbi.
In Sefer Menhagim, it says what I just told you. It says fruit and cake. What's missing? What are you asking? It says mine peris. I think that's the expression. Okay. I mean, usually they serve tuna. I see egg salad. You know, there's this stuff that people serve. I don't know. You can do whatever you want. There's no real rule. Okay, good. So like I explained yesterday, there's the Yesh. Is how the Yesh gets refined through the Ayin of the Mah, Shema. So the Yesh is like Ban. It's how it's refined. And to the point where it can be completely become an Ayin, or the Ayin is shining within the Yesh, which is what we're describing. He's going to now say, same thing, U'kamoi came b'achila de Shabbos. Same thing, like we speak about the man, is by eating a meal on Shabbos. The Einig HaGashmi b'Tzaddikim, Hu Einig Elikim Mamish. That the physical pleasure in mitzvahs Einig Shabbos, Shabbos is a mitzvah to have pleasure on Shabbos. Okay, so he says by tzaddikim, and again he's talking tzaddikim because that's the highest level. Their pleasure is literally on Shabbos. The Einig HaGashmi is Einig Elikim Mamish. U'kamei shekosav tzaddik eichel l'seva nafshe. He brought this also at the bottom of the last page, 1323, very briefly. We spoke about achilas adam, which means that tzaddik eichel l'seva nafshe. People eat to satisfy their body, and a tzaddik eats to satisfy his soul. So seva means to sate the soul. In other words, it's for the nitzutzes, the sparks that fill the soul. And I pointed out a few times that I remember we saw this every Shabbos. The Rebbe would make Kiddush in the beginning of a Farbrengen, and he would have a plate of cake, and we take a small, very small piece, give it to the children there. Then at the end of the Farbrengen, before the Bracha Achrena, the Rebbe would eat more cake. Now, it wasn't because he was hungry. It was because you can't make a Bracha Achrena if you haven't eaten a certain amount. So I remember always thinking that everybody makes a bracha in order to be able to eat. And the Rebbe is eating in order to be able to make a bracha. So that shows to show you, what is the focus. So by a tzaddik, he's eating for the sole purpose, because that's the objective. God wants us to refine the physical world. Most of us eat to satisfy our body, and hopefully we do it to get strength to do a mitzvah. So we do it, like he says in Tanya, chapter 7, to direct the energy, to direct the attention, the kavanah, towards something positive, and not, God forbid, the opposite. But tzaddik eichel seva nafshe, which is the eating, especially Shabbos, because it's Einik Shabbos. The truth is, it's all week long. But he's talking here the higher level. So he says the meal on Shabbos is like this. Segel nefesh ashe, or commission is barley ill beinyan haman. In other words, it's similar to what the man was about. The man was a spiritual food in a physical shape. That's how a tzaddik eats. He's eating spirituality through this physical food. And this meal comes after the davening on Shabbos. By a tzaddik, we learn the davening is ava b'tainugim, not just love, not just avas elam, avas rabba, great love, but ava b'tainugim, tainug, with a tremendous amount of pleasure and desire and delight. That's the davening. Oz tisanig al Hashem. That's when you'll take pleasure with Hashem. So it's referring to the ava b'tainugim of the tzaddik. And he's telling us to delve into the Maimer Kisove, the second one, the second in Ayin Beis, which is volume 2, page 1128 and on. Okay. There he talked, I think, about Shabbos, Tainuk Shabbos, if I recall. Yeah. Shebezeh mamshichim. And now he's bringing it back to what we spoke about. Remember, Tzaddikim draw down Shem Mah and they reveal it through their avodah. So Shebezeh mamshichim gili b'chinas Shem Mah sheyiyeh bli levush. That with this they draw down the revelation of the Shem Mah, the bitl and ayin of Shem Mah, that Shem that carries the etzem from the metzach, from the forehead, but it should be without a garment. Without avodah, it's in garment. You see it only as a glow on the forehead and the face. They bring it down in a way that should be without a garment. But like he explained, it's not like completely no garment, because that's l'osed love, there'll be no garment. Today, there's still something that you can hold on to, the yesh, like he's explaining, but it's completely permeated and saturated with the mah and the ayin. Now he's going to continue and explain how and relate it to the future. This has been going back and forth. He first explained that it's like la'osid, like he said, kamoisha la'osid. Like he said, there will be no levushim amastirim. Then he explained that it's not mamish like la'osid because you need something to hold on to, some garment. But he's still comparing it to the future. It's just not the full version as it will be in the future. Like it says in Tanya, like Matan Torah was a taste of la'osid lavi. During the time when the Jews stood at Sinai and they heard the Aseres HaDibros, it was a taste of la'osid lavi, because godliness was revealed. It saturated the mountain, as we learned, and the physical reality, and everything was elevated. Just like we talk about Ikar Shechina B'Tachtenim Moshe before Chet Tzadas, before the sin of the tree of knowledge, the divine was present. All this is a taste of la'osid lavi. However, it will be permanent and it'll be complete saturation. But these are all tastes of it. So every time like when we say Shabbos is me'ein olam haba, you hear this expression very often in Chazal, that Shabbos is a taste of the world to come, meaning the future. Why? Because relatively speaking, Shabbos compared to the weekdays is a taste of Yom Shekulei Shabbos U'Menucha L'Chai Lomim, an age when it'll be complete Shabbos all the time. So it shouldn't surprise us. This is a constant theme in Yiddishkeit, where we have a taste of things. Like he said earlier as well, we learned the Ein Olam Haba. There are things that we have a taste of in this world from what will be in the future. So he says, so that's what he continues. V'yuvun zeh, and this idea can be understood, b'dugma, the la'osid. It's an example of what will be in the future. He already said it by the middle of the page earlier, but he's going back to it. What does it say? All flesh. The Rebbe emphasizes many times, it doesn't say that the eyes of the flesh itself, will see, will perceive godliness. When you say the very substance, the very matter, the very crassness of kol basar, of all flesh, Yovei, the bitl of ma will permeate, will saturate it. Just as it is now in the soul itself. The soul is by very nature. It's a divine entity. Nobody needs to explain that. The soul never assumes physical properties. The soul is always ethereal and sublime and spiritual. Ruchni, ayin, ma. But the guf gashmi or the basar mamish is not that way. But then it says v'nigla kvedav kol basar yachdov kipi Hashem diber, that the basar itself will also experience this, just like in the neshama. The yesh will experience just like in the ayin. Here, ayin referring to the soul, and the yesh the body. The fishiyir nitvas b'chinas ma elyon gam b'klei haguf dechol basar. Because the higher level of Maha Elyon, the supernal Shem Ma, bittul of Shem Ma of the highest level, of a higher level, will also be permeating in the Klei HaGuf, the Chol Basar, in the very container of the body of all flesh. Shezeu b'chinas gili hamshachas ha'ayin u'mah haleki, b'chinas yesh v'dover d'chemer hagufim. This means this is the gili, the revelation of drawing down of the ayin, the bittul, and the mah of the divine. Ayin and mah of the divine. In other words, the highest levels of the divine that are completely non-physical, non-corporeal. That will come down into the corporeality of yesh v'dover d'chemer hagufim, into the very substance and tangible substance of chemer hagufim, of the very bodies, the physical bodies. That they too should be permeated and saturated with a higher sense of selflessness and nullification, or you can say sublimation. Just like mamish b'shava, like the neshamas, like he said before, that the ayin in the yesh will be b'shava mamish to the ayin itself. So the osir, this will be complete. And why is that the case? V'zel mipnei. This is due to the fact sheyi am shochas b'chinas ma elyon shaloi derech ma'ivra levad. So now he's introducing back the concept of ma'ivra. If you remember, ma'ivra and islapshus. If something comes in islapshus, means it's assuming the properties of its garment. When you put something in a garment, even though the body is not the garment, but the body is channeling through the garment. When you say b'derech ma'ivra, if you remember, means just passing through. Like a funnel. When the wine goes through the funnel, it doesn't assume the properties of the funnel. When the wine goes through certain filters, it does assume the properties. So he's saying that this is what will be lost. The ma will come down, not the it won't just pass through. Which means it's concealed. Like it is now. Now well, let me explain what it means, the ma'ivra alone. In other words, when the ma comes, it's only passing through. It's not becoming part of our reality because the garment is limiting it. So I know it could be confusing because it sounds, derech ma'ivra sounds better than derech islapshus. But in this case, the ma is not becoming part of our reality. It remains removed. It remains, it's only passing through. In a form of concealment, like a concealment in the forehead or the face, like it is now. The mishum zeh, and that's why today, Shema, like we learned before on the top of page 1324, what did he say? That if Ma was revealed on all levels, I'm just reading, Shema, then it would have entered existence, the teichem through and through, and all that the physical reality would be completely nullified. But God concealed the Shema. So even though the Shema is here and it carries the etzem, but it's in a concealed way, the forehead blocks and doesn't allow us to see it in its full glory. That means that the ma is traveling to us through b'derech ma'ivra, because it's not coming into our beings, it's only passing through us. That's how he's using here ma'ivra. The truth is, you could say ma is really coming in his slapshus of the forehead. But he wants to say that the ma remains removed. That's what he's referring to here. So not to confuse matters here. And that's why today the gili is only in the neshama. Gili baba neshama. Why? Because the neshama naturally, sheyesh ba b'chinas habitl dema, because the neshama naturally is a state of bitl. If you look at the soul itself is a sublime, ethereal, selfless entity. Loi b'chemer haguf. But the Shema is, in other words, Shema is the domain of the soul. And the guf is ban, yesh. So the ma doesn't come into the chemer haguf. It's only passing through, like he said. Ukamoy, now he's referring to the nefesh alikis, nefesh habam is the same way. Ukamoy shebenefesh alikis yochli is habitl da Hashem echad. Like we know, by the divine soul, there could be the bitl, the selflessness of Hashem echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad. But in the animal soul, ubenefesh habam is rak habitl de baruch Shem kved malchus leil vod. In the animal soul, it could only be the bitl hayesh that we get from baruch Shem kved malchus leil vod, which is a lower level of bitl. In other words, the neshama can experience bitl b'mitzias, complete selflessness. In the animal soul, all you could do is sublime it, subdue it. That's Baruch Shem, Bitla Hayesh, like we learned before. We learned before by, he said that the Nefesh Abamis is only in the form of iskafia, like Avos Olam. We learned this at the bottom of page 1322 and 1320, both at the bottom of the page. He made it very clear that it's not transforming. So that's the point, that the neshama can have this higher level today. Like he writes in Teireh, the difference between the bitl of the divine soul and the animal soul. But lo'asid love, when me or we should say, but when it's revealed, when Shema will be revealed, begiluyov, kamoshehu, as it is, not through a garment, not through, it won't be concealed and only passing through, like he says, but it'll be revealed the way it is in its natural, in its pure form, not through the block of the forehead. Oz gama gufim achumrim, then also the very crass or materialistic bodies, kamoishehain, as they are, yesh v'dover, as they are yesh v'dover, as they are entities of substance. Yeh b'b'chinas bittul the ayin mamish, will be in a state of utter bittul, utter selflessness, utter non-tangible, utter bittul of ayin mamish. This is all asid love. V'im kain, and based on, and that's the case, harizem amshachas the ma biyesh the gufim. So that's the amshacha drawing down the shema, ma, the bitl of ma, into the yesh, into the substance of the bodies, as it is above in the level of ayin. You're bringing the ma, which is the ayin, into the bodies. Now he's going to go back. This is an example of kamoy kain who amshachas at tzaddikim. Similar to this is what the tzaddikim draw down, shemamshichim through their avodah, through their service, shema, they draw down the revelation of this shema, of the bitl of ma, begufa machumri, in their physical bodies, ubinyonim agashmim shalahem, and in their physical affairs, shem b'bchinas ayin mamish, that all these physical affairs and their physical bodies should be in the state of ayin, of this bitl. Which means the kamoy shem b'chinas yesh, which means as they are in a state of a yesh, harihem b'chinas ayin u'ma mamish. So it's not that the yesh has disappeared and you've like moved back into this world of ayin, but the yesh, as it is a yesh in its world, it'll be ayin u'ma mamish, like the man, the physical man, which was a physical food, is a state of ayin u'ma. So if that's the case, how is it different between the future and now? So now he qualifies. He's now making another distinction. Before he made the distinction that today there's still a yesh, and there'll be no yesh. The yesh will be completely seamless, one with the ayin. Now he's saying the difference is, another difference, is that la'osid, it'll be in the entire world, this state of affairs. And also in the parentheses, he's going back to the first point. That'll be mamish revealed as it is in its root, where the man is like in its root, not as it comes into a physical entity, but like on Shabbos, in its root, there's no entity altogether. Canal. And tzaddikim, on the other hand, by tzaddikim, they're doing it only in their part of the world. They're not transforming the whole world. It's their corner of the world that they're working with. They are creating like a type of an oasis, a taste, somewhat like a taste of what will be in the future in the whole world. That's the distinction he makes now. The entire world and a piece of the world, the part of their world. Like when we say that who was it that said that by him he has Mashiach in his room. And he wanted to smell the smell of Mashiach. He opened the window to see if it's outside. In his world, he already had the Geula. but not in the whole world. So the tzaddik does it in his corner of the world. In addition to the point in the parentheses that the Gilu is also higher at the end of the day, also love it, obviously. And then on the other hand, he's also going to qualify the other way around. Just like he said in the first parentheses, that it's not just in their part of the world versus the whole world, but the Gili will be higher. And the other, and yet Tzaddikim also extend or draw that energy to the general world. I think what he means to say here is that at the end of the day, it spills over to the rest of the world, that they should be more bittul than they would be on their own, which is the bittul of Shema. So in other words, as much as the tzaddik is doing it in his corner of the world, in his part of the world, it's also, because he's introducing such bittul, it has some effect on the general world. Obviously not to the point that Mashiach comes, because if that's the case, Mashiach would be here already. But he's just saying it's not completely just limited to his corner. That there'll be a higher bittul, the bittul of Mah. And this is the service of tzaddikim, shemamshichim gili shema, who they draw down the revelation of the name of Ma, not just they draw it down, revealing it. Uba b'chinis yesh v'dover ma. Interesting how he says yesh v'dover ma. Ma can mean bittul, dover ma means something of substance. So ma has both meanings. It means something, but also bittul. He's using it like a double entendre, like a double. So they're drawing down the gili of shema, the bittul, into the yesh and dover ma of something of substance. Behind, like we say by the man, that the man was lo yodu mazeh. They know what it is. So on one hand, there's a what, but they don't know what it is. So there's a substance, but they don't know what it is. So it's a combination of a what and a what, so to speak. A double what. Of a yesh and a ayin. That's how he's explaining it. V'hainu, which means, I know it's interesting, he repeats certain things several times because it clearly, the Rebbe Rashab is driving home a point here of this back and forth, the yesh and the ayin. He's repeated this idea already 3-4 times, I've noticed, in the last just half a page. V'hainu, sha'adover yesh, hayesh. That means that the physical entity, the entity of substance, ima yeshe b'chinis yesh v'dover, even though it's a thing of substance, I'm not sure what he's adding each time he emphasizes, but clearly he wants to make sure that the point is understood. That as it is yesh, it becomes ayin d'shema, which is essentially the sweetening and the transforming of gura, because he wants to say you are transforming it. You're not just overriding it. That's the key thing he wants to focus on. V'zehu, and now he's going back to the beginning of the whole topic. Remember, all this is coming to explain how the oir is transforming, the light is transforming the darkness, but not that the darkness itself is radiating. The light has transformed the darkness, and it's all light. V'zehu, sha'er ba b'mkei cheshech, like you said, that the light has come now in the place of the darkness. V'cheshech nasa er, and the darkness has become light, but it's become light, not the light of the darkness, the light of the light. That means the darkness has been transformed in its very fundamental and core personality, and has become mamish. Mamish like he explained in the previous page on 1323. This is the service, the work of the full, complete tzaddikim. Shebchinas Mah Elyon Kameshuhu, that Mah Elyon, the higher supernal Mah, the way it is, Harihu Bo Lias Hu Atzme Bchinas Yesh V'Dover B'Gufim B'Chumri Yishalahem. That it itself, the way it is, should come and manifest in the Yesh V'Dover, in their bodies and in their physical and crass reality. Shachumrius B'Chinas Ayin Dema Mamish. That the Chumrius, the very matter, this very crass matter, becomes ayin of ma mamish, u'kamoi haman, like the man, which again he repeats what we said before, like the bread from heaven. V'zeu sha'cheshech nasa er mamish, and this is what means that the darkness becomes literally light. U'bchinas ha'er de shema, but it's the level of shema, not the level of Shem Ban. In other words, it's not a darkness on the level of darkness, it's a level of Oyer. So the Cheshach has been elevated and transformed to the level of Oyer, as he explained before, that's a very high level, but it's still not that the Cheshach itself, which we're going to learn next, gets transformed. It's getting transformed through light and into light. Not the Oyer HaCheshach, like he says, but the Oyer of Oyer. So there's a tremendous achievement here, but it's still Oyer transforming light. And then there's going to be, in the next paragraph, he's going to start with a third type of sweetening, where the darkness itself is going to generate and reveal the divine power within it, not as Oyer. So this is all the Gilui of Etzem, Shema, but Etzem in the world of Giluyim, in the world of Giluyim, and that permeates and reaches all the way to the point that it elevates and transforms the darkness. In contrast to the first type of sweetening, where it doesn't transform it, it engages with it and sweetens it and subdues it and nullifies and neutralizes everything we learned earlier. So this is how we explain now this whole idea. The Shema is bringing the Etzem, so it's the Etzem. That Etzem transforms, but it's still Mamayla Lamata, it's still from the top down. The Ma is being Mavada the Ban. Okay, so we're going to stop here by the end of this paragraph, and I'm open to any questions. No questions? Wow.
How will it be by Tzaddikim lo sid lovoi?
Probably be higher, like anything, Think of the Rebbe. How would the Rebbe be lo sid lovoi compared to today? Today you still have to contend with the golus, with darkness. As much as you draw down these levels, every tzaddik wanted to have the gula. The gula is, like he said, first of all, the whole world is transformed. Second of all, in Eichus, it's going to be completely a different reality. You have to contend with the Yesh. You wouldn't have a sikha like Chavches Nissen, where the Rebbe says, the Golus haven't gone out of the Golus Pnimi, and have to contend with all kinds of different challenges we still have. And as far as the Giluyim goes, what he says here, there's the Ayin within the Yesh, there's still a Lavush, lost of love, there be no Lavush, which he didn't explain yet, full sense, but he's going to explain it, I'm sure, when we talk about the third level. I think the third level is going to explain very deeply what is ultimately the transformation that happens, lost of love as well. So the topic is far from over. The next section is going to start talking about this third way of sweetening that does not come through chesed and oir, but comes from the gvura and cheshach itself. That's going to go for, just to give you the lay of the land, till 12, this is 1325, all the way till wow. Till 1342. So we're talking about almost 20 pages. I'd say 17 pages. He's going to discuss the third approach, and then he's going to go back to the Tzaddikim and the difference in Tzaddikim and Baalei Tshuva in the context of all of this. So if you remember, that's where he began the topic when he asked the difference. What's the difference in Lasov et Tzaddikai b'tiyufta? A tzaddik will do tshuva. Mashiach will cause tzaddikim to do tshuva on page 1306, and the difference between actual tshuva of Baalei Tshuva. That's all going to be understood through this process. What we're learning now. Obviously, tzaddikim are connected more to Oyer. Baalei Tshuva connected more to Cheshach. So that's going to be back in 1342. He's going to speak about that, Tzaddikim Baalei Tshuva. Just give you the lay of the land here. And that will ultimately lead us to Ein Oid, where he's going to conclude the topic of Ein Oid on page 1345 approximately. And then he's going to conclude the parentheses, the 500 and some page parentheses that began in early volume 2, about the Shtei Chatzetzes, the Torah of the Magid. That's going to go till page 1349. So we're talking now another 20, 25 pages. And then begins Torah. This is all Mamat L'mayla Tefillah. But we'll get there. I don't want to jump. We're far from, we're not there yet. We have another 20, 25 pages to go. But that's the process here. He's going to finish with Einoid, and then he's going to move to a new subject in this about, Torah.
So I have a question, and I'm still working through this in my head.
1350.
Forgive me.
One second. 1350. We're not 25 pages. Wow. Okay. Can't believe we reached that far. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So forgive me if this is a stupid question, but I'm still working through this in my head. What the sweetening, the second approach, sweetening of the gross, at least in the past 2 pages, is talking about the avoda of tzaddikim. But I thought we learned that learning Torah is also a method of this type of transforming the gross, or is it just through the avoda of the tzaddikim that we have this second approach? And if it's, in other words, what are the ways to accomplish this second approach?
Didn't you ask this question 2 days ago?
I might have, and I apologize.
Okay, so the answer is very straightforward. It's not the bottom line is, this is a general approach of transforming the Yesh or the Gvuras into a full transformation. He spoke how this happened by Matan Torah in the Midbar. He spoke Torah. He also gave the example of, they said about the sweetening of the water, about seeing the face of the king. This is all part of the process of how you transform. Tzaddikim is the full glory. They do this. This is their primary work. Most of us don't. We barely can finish the first step of even subduing the animal soul. We're dealing with a real war, like he says in Tanya. We have a nefesh abamis, nefesh alikis. So bottom line is we're constantly battling. A tzaddik has reached this level that really does this type of transformation that he's saying, the gili of Shema. Now, me'enze, which means in a small taste of it, just like everything is relative, just like Shabbos is a taste of Losed Love, all of us on Yom Kippur have a taste of Yechida. By a tzaddik, he has it all year round. Just like a tzaddik is called, a Talmid Chacham is called Shabbos all week long. So we have a taste of it on Shabbos. So through learning Torah, you have a taste of this. There's a semblance of it. But the full sense of it is what he's describing. This is in general, that's in general the approach to all these type of ideas. So can you find a subtle way? Yeah, everybody has something. Learning Torah does achieve a certain element of it. But if you want to be realistic, the fact of the matter is, why don't you ask a better question? How could anybody experience the second level when we're dealing with a war between the animal soul, divine soul? And the second level is not a war. The second level is B'mela. So the answer is, there's a taste of it. We have elements of it at certain times.
Okay, thank you very much. And at least you're consistent, because I probably did ask that question in a different way, but it's the same point. So thank you for explaining it from multiple directions. Thank you very much.
Sure. Are there any other questions? Okay. So we finished the paragraph on page 1325, and we'll continue tomorrow and Friday also, unless you guys have a problem with that. I think tomorrow's Thursday, and then Friday. Yeah, sure. What better way to prepare for Matan Torah, right?
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the end of the